Welcome back to the MOC course titled Corporate Social Responsibility. My name is Aradhana Malik and I'm helping you with this course. And we have discussed a variety of things. We've talked about what CSR is. We've discussed theories of CSR. We have discussed the history and evolution of CSR. Today we are going to talk about how CSR evolved in India. So that is, I'm assuming most of the people enrolled for this course or taking this course for a certificate, going in, most of the people intending to enroll in this course with the explicit intention of earning a certificate out of this are based in India. And so it is very important for us to understand how CSR evolved in India and what is happening to the CSR efforts in India now. So this lecture and the next lecture will focus exclusively on CSR efforts in India. Okay, CSR in India, corporate social responsibility efforts in India. Now, the evolution of Indian CSR has been traced by various researchers, and they have finally categorized it into 4 different phases. The first phase lasted from 1850 to 1914. The second phase went from 1910 to 1960, so there was a bit of an overlap. The third phase lasted from 1950 to 1990, and the fourth phase went on from 1980 onwards. Now, again, some other researchers have broken this up further into more than 4 phases. So we are going to discuss the various phases of CSR, but this is one classification. Another classification has 6 different phases, and so that's what we will talk about now. Okay, phase 1, 1850 to 1914. The economic phase in this particular phase was industrialization. In this time, more and more industrialization was taking place. A lot of what did the rulers do in the name of development during this phase? It was a colonial time. The British had occupied India, and in the name of development they were trying to extract the profits. They were trying to extract money from people who were earning to build roads, to build infrastructure, to develop the country. Corporate CSR was in the form of dynastic charity. We had princely states, we had little kingdoms here. So these the corporate social responsibility formally was in the form of charities by dynasties, by rulers, by kings of these states. In the second phase, which lasted from 1914 to 1947, the economic phase was, we had trade barriers. Now, as you can see, the second phase has been broken up. In the first classification, the second phase was from 1910 to 1960. The second phase in this classification is from 1914 to 1947, and this has been broken up by Deo. And she says that the economic phase in this time was trade barriers, and what did the rulers do at this time? This was again a colonial time, but at this time the rulers, the British, knew that there was a lot of uprising in India. In 1857 we had mutiny, the first mutiny officially noticed by the British, and they knew that their time was going to be up. So they started exploiting the labor. As you can see, what did the rulers do in the name of development? They started exploiting the labor. They started exploiting people who were still listening to them in the name of development, and they tried to get them to do things for the welfare of the country, so people would still think that they were not doing so much harm to the country. Now again, I have nothing against the current British. I'm just talking about historical facts here. So the people who had taken over our India were not so comfortable. They knew their time was up. corporate CSR was in the form of support to the freedom struggle. So anyone who had any extra money was trying to give funds to the parties, to the people, to the groups that were involved in the freedom struggle. And till 1947, when finally the British gave up India and India was free, till that time anybody who had extra money was in most cases pumping money into the freedom struggle. In the third phase that lasted from 1947 to 1960, now what happened was the country was in shambles. The country was totally broken up. The country was, the British had left and we were new. We did not know what a democracy was. A lot of princely states had been clubbed into this one big, very nice country, and a part of the country had broken up and become Pakistan. Another part of the country had become East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. So bits of the country had broken up, and the rest of the country had become united. So these kingdoms had come together and people did not know what was happening. There was a lot of destruction. The Indo-Pak partition led to a lot of lives being lost, and at that time, there was so much going on at that time that the focus was on building the nation. So the economic phase at this time was socialism and protectionism. There was this need to protect, to take care of the resources we had. What did the government do for development? We were a new democracy. The government made 5-year plans and tried to be systematic in its development efforts. And they said, this is how we will help the country build or help the country recover from this very big onslaught, from this very big tragedy, we will help the new country grow as a as a very strong democracy. So the focus was on recovering whatever we could recover from all of these problems, and then nurturing it and consolidating it, and then building up the resources. So the government did. And now again, if you see in the previous slides, I have said what did the rulers do. By this time, after 1947, we had become a democracy and we had a government. So the government's responsibility was to look after the country, not exploit it. So they made 5-year plans and they said, this is what we will accomplish. Corporate CSR, again, in this time was to support the new state. Now by state, we don't mean these small states like Bengal and Himachal Pradesh and Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. We are not talking about those states. We are talking about the country as a whole. So the corporate CSR, anybody who had extra money that they could spare from their businesses was pumping the money into building the country, into supporting anything that went into building the country. And people were also trying to launch their own rural initiatives. They knew that the majority of the Indian population lived in smaller villages. They did not live in bigger cities. Of course, the cities were also not as developed as they are now, but a very, very large number of India's population lived in villages, and these villages did not have basic necessities. So a lot of this extra money went into looking after the rural people. Okay. Then the next phase lasted from 1960 to 1990. Again, if you see, the previous classification was 1950 to 1990, sorry. Deo has broken this up into, she has made very clear classifications here, and she says this fourth phase, sorry, went from 1960 to 1990. And in this phase, it was the economic phase here, or the economic undercurrents were, there were heavy regulations. Now we have built something. In the previous time, we were trying to protect something. There was socialism, and then by then we had started building things. So what did we need to do? We needed to make sure that our whatever resources we had we had to stabilize ourselves were not lost. And there's a difference between protectionism and regulations. Regulations help the optimal, or they facilitate the optimal use of resources. Resources are being used, but there is a very clear, the laws had been put in place, and we were finally, as a country, we were trying to see how we can use our resources as best as possible. So that the emphasis was on laws and rules and regulations. What did the government do for development? We had licensing. So everything was licensed, everything had to go through a licensing authority, but unfortunately the government seemed to have failed at most of the development efforts. Again, this is according to Deo. I don't, I will not give my own opinion at this about this over here. But what corporate CSR did was, again, we were a new democracy. We were still learning. I won't say we didn't know. We were still learning how to do things. We were still learning how to manage the complexity of this huge, huge nation called India. I mean, India is as diverse as it gets. We have over 1,500 officially mapped dialects. The administration of the country is currently run in more than 15, I think it's 18 official languages, and we communicate with the center in English and Hindi, either English or Hindi or both. So every state has its own language, and every language has so many dialects. And then there is so much of cultural diversity, and with cultural diversity there comes this whole complexity of people believing in different things, people doing things differently, people having different priorities. When we talk about corporate social responsibility, a big part of CSR is prioritization. What is important for one may not be important for another. So one community may think the education of all the children is important. Another community may say we don't have resources, we don't have fresh drinking water. So our priority, even before education, is to make sure that everybody living in this geographical region has enough water to drink. So, how do you make that distinction? In fact, I think it would be appropriate to mention a book that I read recently, or not recently, that I've read over a period of time, several times. And so I think it would be appropriate to mention a book that I have read about the socio-economic diversity in India, and that book is called Everybody Loves a Good Drought by P. Sainath. If you ever get a chance, please read it, and you will realize what we were dealing with at that time. It's shocking. You can't get through more than 2 or 3 stories without tearing up. At least I cannot. And a lot of the problems that are mentioned in that book, it's a collection of tiny stories, 5 or 6 pages each, but then that helps us realize how different people's priorities can be, what people can need. So when we talk about development, when we talk about social responsibility of profit making organizations, a big part of it is prioritizing, and that is what the government was probably struggling with. What do they do? What is going to be helpful for the people? And that is why probably in this phase there was a lot of mistakes were made. I won't call them mistakes, they were just genuine failures at after having tried very hard to appeal to the needs of the people, or to try to do something for the people. So in this phase the government tried but was not very successful at development efforts. The corporate social responsibility was in the form of corporate trusts. People said, okay, we have money, we'll have a committee, and everything will be, what do trusts do? They have a mission, they have a special focus, and they say we'll give money but only for this particular cause. Excuse me. So when people had money, they said, okay, we will have this corpus of money and we will give it for this particular cause. The next phase, the 5th phase, lasted from 1991 to 2013. Now again, if you see here, the first classification is 1980 onwards, but Deo has broken this up further, and she says from 1991 liberalization started happening. So we were stable, we knew what we had, we knew where we wanted to go. What did the government do for development? They started shrinking in production and they started expanding their efforts in social provision. They said, okay, we need to look after our people. We have infrastructure, we have ideas, we are stable, we are moving from a newly formed country to a developing country. So let us now look after the people who are actually doing what the country is. And the corporate CSR then focused on family trusts, private public partnerships, NGO sponsorship. There were people who were funding NGOs. In 2009, Ministry of Corporate Affairs National Voluntary Guidelines on Social, Environmental and Economic responsibilities came out, and these were updated in 2011. We will discuss these in detail. You'll be amazed to see how much the government has decided for us and how many details have been laid out, what we have been the detail with which these guidelines have been made. So it's really very nice. Then the last phase was 2013 to present. The economic phase at this point was globalization. Now that we are comfortable within our own skin, we are comfortable within this particular state that we have, let's move out of our borders and see what is happening outside. What did the government do for development? They realized the need to manage inequality, and they came up with new reforms to liberalize further. So they said we need to manage inequality, we need to liberalize more. New reforms were put in place, and corporate social responsibility, the new addition was the 2% mandatory CSR spending section was added to the Companies Act. We will discuss this in greater detail in the next lecture. So that is, so you can see how we have come to this stage. Okay. Now, the models of CSR have been studied in India, and these have been put in a very nice paper by Professor Balasubramaniam of IIM Bangalore, and have been later explained by many people, including Arevalo and Aravind in 2011. And they say that social responsibility efforts in India take the shape of four different shapes. The first one is the Gandhian model or the ethical model. Now, in the ethical model or the Gandhian model, social responsibility takes the shape of voluntary commitment to public welfare based on ethical awareness of broad social needs. We see what is happening in what is happening around us, we see what is required, and we feel, we have this inherent need, we have this inherent urge to go and help the community. So that is the Gandhian model. Then we have the statist model or Nehruvian model, according to which state-driven policies, including state ownership and extensive corporate regulation and administration, govern what kind of activities really take place. So these policies drive the CSR efforts. The state decides what you must do and you follow that. You follow rules and regulations, and something happens for the welfare of the community. The third model, they said, or the third way by which CSR efforts take place in India are as per the liberal model or the Friedman model, according to which corporate responsibility is primarily focused on owner objectives. What do I want to achieve in the community? What do I want to do for the community? I have this extra money, I am doing everything the law wants me to do. I have some need, maybe somebody, or maybe I am a self-made person, maybe I had trouble with access to education. So I want to make sure that nobody from my hometown ever has trouble accessing good quality education. So what do? When I have extra money, I go back to my hometown and build a school there. Maybe I grew up in a village. Lots of people do this, so maybe I grew up in a village, and at that time there were no resources, and when I grew up I made lots of money. I go back to my village, build a school, build a hospital. So everything is dependent on my objectives. What do I want to do for the community? The community's needs are taken into account, but it's primarily, the efforts are driven primarily by my own objectives, my own urge, which is rooted in my personal experiences or history or something that I have felt like doing at some point. So that is the liberal model. The last one is the stakeholder model or the Freeman model. We have talked about this, but I'll still repeat a little bit. Stakeholder model talks about stakeholder responsiveness, which recognizes direct and indirect stakeholder interests. So companies, profit-making organizations actually go and find out what the community needs, and they pool their resources together and try to give the community what the community needs. So these are the 4 ways in which CSR is taking place in India. Now I have some homework for you. Since this is a live classroom, I think I can expect you to do a little bit of homework. So this is the homework. On the course forum, all of you are subscribed to the forum. This is what I would like you to do. On the course forum, please list and provide links to Indian organizations following these models of social responsibility through their outreach activities. Find out. Go online and find out what organizations are doing for the community. You may be associated with some MNC or some large organization. You may even be a part of the CSR efforts of a profit-making organization. Find out what these efforts relate to, which of these models do each of these efforts relate to, and please list them on the forum. That will make for very interesting reading and a lot of inputs for the rest of the class. So this is one homework I have for you. Now, excuse me, what drives CSR in Indian organizations? The first one here is, and again this has been studied by Professor Balasubramaniam and his associates, and there is a genuine concern for the society. So that is one of the drivers, and in this there is a concern for social improvement. People are genuinely concerned for the society. They may be concerned for social improvement. They may be driven by their own ethics and values. They may be driven by a need to care for the society, or they may believe in stewardship. So most of the Indian companies, again, I'm not saying this doesn't happen abroad, but this is where a large number of Indian profit-making organizations seem to be focused on. The second thing that drives CSR efforts in Indian organizations is profit. And what does profit mean? Profit could be in the form of corporate reputation. We are doing good, so we are great, so please invest in us because we are looking after the community. Employee and customer relations, this is another thing that could add to the value of the organization. Stakeholder impact, responsiveness to local communities, all of these have an impact on the profits that a company makes. Legal compliance and strategic and corporate planning at the board level. So all of these are drivers, or this is how, these are the reasons why organizations invest in CSR. So primarily for these 2 reasons, in Indian companies, there are primarily 2 reasons for which, and again this is a study, the study has been conducted by professors from IIM Bangalore, and that's what they found out. So they found out that people invest in CSR for 2 reasons. Let's just go back to this. There's a genuine concern for the society, and they could be doing this for profits, and that is really what drives the CSR efforts in the country. Now I have another homework for you. On the course forum, please list examples of Indian corporate organizations whose work highlights each of these focus areas. That is, genuine concern for the society and profits. So you just go in and find out, and again, this is only for discussion. This is only for discussion. I have a lot of respect for anyone who is helping the community. If you have extra money, please go out and please do a little something for the not so advantaged, not so comfortable around you. Whether you're doing it for profit or you're doing it out of genuine concern for the society, I think both are at par with each other. But it's important to know who's doing it for what reason, and if you are in an organization that subscribes to each of two different value systems, or you're in an organization that is involved in CSR activities, it would help you to know why they are doing it. So maybe you can find examples and list these examples on the forum for everybody's benefit. Now that is all we have time for in this lecture. I hope you found it useful, and we will continue with some more discussion with details about a couple of things that we discussed in this lecture in the next class. So thank you very much for listening.